I don't usually do this, but who cares? I'm doing it anyway. I'm sure everyone is well aware that Kendrick, K-Dot, Kung Fu Kenny is back with a new single, and it gives me chills every time I play it back. To all the easy-minded listeners who still have that shock factor from the diss war, let me stop the soiling in your pants and be the one to say, this is deeper than Drake. That's right, that's crazy, I know. Kendrick isn't dropping nukes on the sixth god, but rather the radio industry as a whole. Which is why it's interesting that he dropped this specifically on 9/11, because it raises a couple potential meanings that I won't get into right now. With the recent release of Kendrick's new untitled track, which we will call Watch the Party Die, because that's what Genius says, Kendrick is speaking on one of modern rap's biggest and most controversial issues that I personally agree with wholeheartedly. I mean, like, down to a T. So the overall summary that I've picked up from this track is that as time moves forward, we've seen an influx of radio rappers who push worldly messages of money, sex, and drugs. They push forward this lifestyle that they live, and it continues to influence our youth and the future generations of rappers. Kendrick ultimately thinks it's time to kill off this popularization of immoral and useless culture. Now, I feel that him dropping this right after the beef was more of a chess move, knowing how many eyes are currently, turned toward him after taking the high ground of this beef, leaving so many to tune into what he has to say. What better time to push a message like this other than now? The man is performing for the Super Bowl. This is his time. Now, through all the willing listeners, you'd expect this message to fall on some deaf ears as well, right? Kendrick makes that point in his song, stating, "Influencers talk down because I'm not with the basic shit." Now, this is a fact pointed toward all the YouTubers, podcasters, streamers, who listen but don't care for a lecture of sorts. It's not cool to rap about politics, Unc. Remember what Drake said, always rapping like you about to get the slaves freed, which is still questionable. What do you mean by that, Drake? But it really does suck to live in this desensitized world where rappers don't have appreciation for the culture, but instead want to push this gluttonous life of violence and all that comes with it. Kendrick repeatedly tells us they add nothing to society but bad influence. I can't tell you guys how many kids I see nowadays rocking shiesties in this hot weather and cursing out adults. Yes, it can come down to bad parenting for the most part. There are multitudes of factors as to why bad behavior sparks in children, but it would be ignorant to ignore and rule out the media. You can't sit here and say that kids aren't easily affected by what they see online, right? Like, that's just life now. Kids idolize these men who beat women and cause trouble. It's a huge conundrum, and it won't stop until we kill it. To be clear, I mean kill as in, this way of life, not people. There was once a time in hip-hop where it was normalized to put meaning and purpose into the music. Lyricism was thriving. Of course, you still had your gangster rap, but even many men had more lyrical prowess than the gang nonsense, we hear nowadays. What's even more real is Kendrick calling out the media for being useless in a crisis like this, because instead of giving real perspective on certain aspects of the music, they instead choose to push propaganda and defamation because it gets them a check at the end of the day. We hear him speak on this when he says, "The radio personality pushing propaganda for salary." Kendrick then goes on to tell us that he believes in a newer and even better world where instead we spread positivity and real life advice to the youth like his inspirations did before him. He mentions Christian rapper Lecrae in the beginning, and I like a certain distinction Lecrae made between Kendrick and Drake. He says Drake is a fan of the culture. Meanwhile, Kendrick is a product of the culture. I find this to be a great short form explanation. Drake has always been fascinated by hip hop legends before him, but has never done anything in his music to show real appreciation. Drake has never cared enough to speak from the heart and create something with substance. Like Kendrick explained, we constantly see a pattern of him sort of shrouding into the culture using other artists, but Drake has no personal understanding for this culture. Instead, we see him pander towards the mainstream world of pop radio, because at the end of the day, it's wealth over wit, vibes over virtue. Like I said in the beginning, this track hits me on a personal level because I can't remember a time where I've heard a song like this that intricately speaks on a real world societal issue to this degree. This is something that holds a lot of weight with how currently true and problematic it is. So while yes, Drake does fall under the umbrella of what he's speaking on in this track, this is still much bigger than Drake. I wouldn't call this a diss, but a protest and a call to action on destroying this hedonistic lifestyle that rappers are unapologetically showcasing to the world. I want to take a moment to say I am just the messenger and wanted to break down this song for all the confused out there. I think Drake is good on his own merits, and same with Kendrick. And at the end of the day, I'm sure we all know who outclasses who, so I'll move past it. Kendrick! I think it would be cool if the next album we hear from Kenny is in this form of context, where he creates a concise album speaking on ridding the world of these gluttonous artists and bringing about a better one. That's all I really have to say here. Like and subscribe if this helped clear things up, and thanks for watching.